Okay, so here's my leadership story, right? Of funny now, not funny then at the time, but kind of funny, where I never promote getting mad at your boss, because one time several years ago, I got really mad at my boss for something, and I was going to make a point, right? So I like stormed back to my office and I was like, oh, show her. And I slammed the door. These were glass doors though. And so I don't recommend slamming the glass door. I didn't even think, because, as a kid, you slam the door, it's no big deal. But at an office, a beautiful office with glass doors, and you slam it, and then the door, in the movies where you kind of see it starts to shatter, and you're like, oh no, this isn't, yeah. Oh, it is happening. Okay. And so slam door, shatters like that glass that's on the your windshield, but it didn't completely fall, but the whole glass was shattered. And I'm inside the office though. And so I go to get out of the office, and sure enough, the glass all comes falling down. And at that point, I just looked at my boss and I just kept walking, because I was like, how do you get out of this one? And so I just started walking. I got in my car and I literally drove home. And I was hoping it didn't really happen, but sure enough, I get the phone call about, hey, you just broke the door. Where are you at? And I'm like, I'm already home. So yeah, don't slam the glass office doors. And when you do that, if you do, don't go home. Stay there. It's probably better. But yeah, welcome to my life.
That's a leadership lesson. I think, we can wrap up the podcast. Like, do not slam the glass door. I learned something new.
Break glass ceilings, not glass doors.
Not glass doors. I love it.
Hello and welcome. I'm Karen Rosenfeld here with Omer Glass, Growth Space's CEO. Today's guest is Sean Conley. Sean has over 35 years of experience in leadership and development and has worked with leaders and teams across more than 40 countries. He's held senior roles at companies like Baker Hughes and NBC Universal. Currently, he's the president and owner of Conley Global. Hi, Sean, and welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much. Every time I hear that intro, I just go, gosh, I'm getting old.
But you started when you were 15, so it's fine.
Exactly. I'm just old and wiser, I will say.
I like, who is it? Diane von Furstenberg says she's not older, she's just lived more.
Thank you. I like her.
I like that better. So you've lived this many years, which that's about wisdom and not about age, right?
And I think I have lived pretty well. Like, when it comes to this crazy world that we're in, it is an adventure, isn't it?
So speaking of adventures, you like that segue? Let's talk about your biggest success story. And you always like to wear hats. So what's the success in L&D that you like to hang your hat on?
Oh, wow. Great question. I think it really does come back to my tenure in this industry, I think. And one of the things I will absolutely always hang my hat on, of which I have many, at last count over 75. Today's the podcast hat. But the one thing I like to really hang my hat on is I think I have been through almost everything you can go through in an industry, because I've not changed. I've been in the same industry now my entire career, starting off, many, many years ago in the food service industry to, theme parks, to big companies, small companies. But I've seen that kind of evolution. And so I think the thing I would hang my hat on is I have a lot of knowledge that some of it's not worth anything, but a lot of it's just there. Those little tidbits of things that you're like, oh yeah, I remember 25 years ago. I remember 30 years ago when we did this, because it seems like, everything old is new again at some point. And so it just kind of, I can recycle, and I don't think that's the right term, but I can rethink similar things that have happened in the past. And that's why I tend not to get freaked out about things that are happening now. And, everybody's talking about, the next evolution and learning and what's AI going to do and how is it going to displace everybody and things like that. And I don't really worry about it. I think it's kind of cool, but I just think it's just another kind of notch in the world of learning. But, having done this for so long, it's just exciting to me to say I still like it. I still enjoy it.
Amazing. Is there a story of something where you felt like you made a huge impact specifically where you were?
Yeah, I'll tell one that, and it's the word impact, because that's a big word for me, is trying to constantly make an impact in what you do. And sometimes making an impact will come with great accolades, and other times making that impact will come with a lot of people that are pissed off at you, but you're like, I made an impact. And so I'll just tell you a story of an organization that I was in, and I was tasked to talk about change. Really was the ultimate thing, and it was going to be a leadership session, and we're going to bring up change. And so they're like, Sean, just go do something, make it really creative, do whatever you want. And whenever somebody says do whatever you want, with me, that's kind of dangerous. So I'm like, okay, what can I do? So I actually brought in some friends of mine who come from various walks of life, various industries. And my whole point was to showcase them, but showcase that when you think about change, we just go at it from a systemic, here's the pro-sci model, whatever, and we just step by step. And I like to talk about the human element of change and how that impacts people, right? And so I brought in people who could not be more diverse. One of them is a Buddhist monk. When she hears this, she'll be like, it's not Buddhism, Sean, it's something else, but you get the point there. The other one was the author of a book, and who was all about shaking up the industry. And then the other one is a street performer, and in New York. And so I brought these folks in, and it turned out it was a panel. So I was interviewing them. I thought it was really cool, right? Because I have really cool friends. And we wrapped up the session, and we get my boss at the time came back to me and said, oh, we got a phone call from somebody very, very senior in the organization. I'm trying to keep names and people out of this one, but that's okay. But super, super senior, who literally said that session was an epic failure. Like, those were the words that got back to me. And listen, I'm human like everybody else. And so my first reaction was, oh crap, right? My heart kind of sunk a little bit. And I was like, I wasn't even going to update my resume. I had to find a resume. First of all, I'm like, I don't have a resume. I better update it there. But then I thought to myself, actually, that's probably the best compliment I have ever received, because I knew at that moment I pushed some buttons, and that was my job. My job was to push buttons. My job was to get people to think differently and to react differently and to understand that the world of change is exactly that. You're going to push people's buttons. I mean, it's a metaphor, right? So as uncomfortable somebody might have been and called that an epic failure, then you start to think about, well, what's the element there that blocked them, right? Well, it was because it was change. It was different. It wasn't what they expected. They wanted world-class scholars coming in there and talking about how to implement a change model and, whatever that kind of stuff is, but that's just not me. So I say that story because it really, it stuck with me. It's been with me for many, many years now, and I'm proud of it. But I think it also just shows that in those moments when you're faced with really loving the craft that you have and being good at it, sometimes people need to hear a message they don't want to hear. And sometimes in that message comes their greatest growth. And that's what my job is, right? Is to help people grow and develop. And so I will take epic failure as kick-ass success.
Actually, I will add one thing on top of it. I think the fundamental of success, the foundation of success is failure, right? Because if you do not dare to do things that may fail, you will not succeed. So I think you need to be willing to fail if you want to be extremely successful. Like, think about it. No entrepreneur in the world was successful for playing safe, right? You need to take a risk. So I think it's the same for learning development. If you want to do something interesting, it's not the whole old copy paste of what everyone is doing. Do something different, right? Or like, again, be bold. There. So you dared. And sometimes you will fail, or like you position it will succeed. It doesn't matter. You need to try.
And if you get an epic failure, it's even better, right? But I think you're so right that the point is, like, I didn't know. I just thought, well, here's what I would like to receive. I'd like to listen to these people because I found them super interesting. And they all, talk about change in different ways, from kind of spiritual dynamics to dealing with crazy hecklers in an audience to interviewing companies and finding out like how they've gotten through things. So they all had really interesting stories. And to your point, they've all found failure too. And that's part of the conversation, is where have they learned and where have we grown? And in the learning space, to just echo what you said, there is a lot of, what I call shampoo, right? Where I don't have to use shampoo anymore, but where you have to, you wash, you lather, you rinse, and you repeat. And that, to me, is so often what you get in learning. You're like, oh, we do it this way, and we do it that way, and we just do it all over again. Versus what I was trying to say earlier is, with all this kind of crazy experience that I have never taught the same class twice. I have never implemented the same program twice. I have done similar things. I have used similar content, but I have never done anything with the same audience and the same company and the same people. And that's where you can really bring, I think, joy in what we do and uniqueness, where, again, you've all been there. We've all been to conferences, right? Where you see people regurgitating information that's on a slide, and there's no heart and soul in it. And I think that's what we need more, is we need heart and soul back in learning, where you're just doing some cool things with cool people and just trying to figure things out. And failure, I think, is how you look at it. And those moments along the way where you're kind of struggling, you're like, wow, that might not have been my best work, but that's my perception, right? There are other people's perceptions out there. And, that story I told you, there were plenty of other people that came back and said, wow, that's really cool. That was so interesting. But I remember that one, it was like, that was an epic failure. You're like, what? I had to look it up. I don't know what that means. So, but it was one of those things where you go, what do I do with that information? And do I back down or do I push forward? And it's a moment like that where you say, I'm going to push forward to find that success and to make a difference.
So what was the program that got the best, the best responses?
I think constantly the best programs to me are when it's the right audience. I tend to do a lot of work with kind of mid-level leaders. That's kind of my happy place. And to me, the best response is 2 years later, 3 years later, when somebody finally tracks you down and they're like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. They all start off that way. But I was in your session many, many years ago, and I'm still using that thing. I'm still doing what you told me to do. I'm still thinking about that thing. And I have so many people that have done that. And I was on a phone call with somebody actually earlier today who, I think we started off as kind of a coach, but now it's kind of mentor and peer mentoring type relationship, who was in a workshop of mine in 2009. It's 2024. I can't do the math that quick, but that's a lot of years, right? And it's those kind of moments where, like he said today, he's like, I will never forget that. And I did a thing where it involves toilet paper. I'll just leave it at that. And if anybody's interested, they can just reach out to me. But he said, I remember the toilet paper and I remember how many sheets of toilet paper I took. And I just start laughing because I'm like, oh, I remember doing that a long time ago. But it's the point that, those are the best programs. I don't know what the name of it is. I don't know any of that. I just know it's always when those people come back to you and they're like, you helped me. And that's what makes a difference to me.
That's quite the legacy. I don't even know where we take it from here. I mean, I will ask though, were there situations where objectively you took it in as, okay, I could have done better. Maybe it wasn't an epic fail, but it was a swing and a miss, and everyone sort of acknowledges it. And then what did you learn from that, and what did you take moving forward?
Sure. Examples like back in the day, right? I'll probably give you a recent one too if I can just think of something. But I always find if my heart isn't in it, it's not going to be good. And I don't know, it's many, many years ago, there's time management was all the rage, right? Everybody's teaching time management. There was you can use the day timers and all this kind of stuff. And I would teach some of those classes and I would talk about tools that I didn't use and that I thought were really stupid. And I would never do that. It just wasn't my thing. But yet that was the program that I was assigned to teach. And I had to teach it this way using that content in that, in that manner. And I for the first few times I taught it, I would go through the motions and be like, yeah, I've got this and here's how I do it. And then I just thought, that's a bunch of bullshit. Can I say that? It's just not me. And so I would walk away from those sessions going, you are a fraud. You are teaching you don't even believe in that stuff. And maybe it works. I don't know. It's just not my style, because if you saw how I did time management, people's heads would explode, but it worked for me. It's all very chaotic. It's all over the place with a lot of Post-it notes. That's my time management. Now it's gotten much better because I got, fancy things, but that's a failure to me. And that's when I would walk away going, you have no clue what you're talking about there. And you can't phone it in. And I think back then I was phoning it in, and I would go through and pretend like I had joy, but it also can reflect back and saying those were the worst times in my career too, where I was incredibly unhappy and, questioning every day, is this the right company? Because I never questioned me, right? I always question, is it the right company? Is this the right boss? Not the same boss where I slammed the door either. But it's you question those things. And then I realized you just could care less about the subject. And so now, my disclaimer when anybody asks me, I'm like, I will, facilitate, teach, research, strategize, anything, but not time management. There's no way. I will not touch it. I don't care about it. I have my own system and it is my life. So somebody else can do that because they'll be much better. But I think to come back to what you were saying in a weird way is, as a learning professional, no matter what role you're in, and I have had every role there is in learning, right? From, design to facilitator to learning leader, all of that, all of it. If you are not passionate about what you do, you will always come across as a fraud, and people will see right through it. And I know people like that. You know people like that just do it for the paycheck. And I don't do it for the paycheck. I never have, and I never will. I've been fortunate to get great paychecks. I've been fortunate to have 3 jobs because my paycheck wasn't great. But you can't do it that way. And I think as learning people, we oftentimes forget, when's the last time you actually participated in your own learning and you went to a workshop, you went to whatever it is that you're, subscribing to other people. And you have to be a learner to be a great learning person, in my opinion.
I love it. I have a question. So I met Sean, I believe it was in LA in a conference, a CLDI conference. And I saw you on stage and said, wow, who's this crazy person? And then you told me, like you met me and you told me that you read something I wrote on LinkedIn. I think it was before we worked with Baker Hughes. So one thing I remember about you is that your keynote was, or panel, you talked about easy, engaging, impactful, which are kind of like your three values for learning, which was the first time when I met a CLO of like a really large company, like talking in values and basically having the values leading them and leading the way they do their job and like the way they choose things, make decisions, so forth, which is very similar to how companies behave, right? Because like we have 5 values that like every employee knows and we really like stand behind. So I wonder if there are CLOs listening to us just about like, how did you come up with, again, easy, engaging, impactful? And why is it important for a leader, for a CLO to come up with their values, like behind what they do?
Yeah. First of all, I 100% remember that conference where we met too. And I did, respond and I learned about you through LinkedIn. And I'm always interested in people who are kind of creating a different or a unique space, right? And then when you were at the conference, it was just kind of one of those moments where it was like, wow, this is that person right here in front of me who I think is doing a game changer in their industry, of which I like to think of myself too. And, really easy, engaging, impactful. I've used that in many different ways in different organizations, but it's because it's how I think as a person. Like, it has to be easy. I go to so many things and I read reports and like if I have to look up words, then that's not easy, right? Like, simplify it. Like, you do not have to impress anybody with fancy words and fancy charts and graphs and PowerPoint. It has to be simple, because if I don't understand it, I can't do anything with it. And the reason why easy is so important is because oftentimes people are afraid to ask questions in a learning environment. I try to make it as, comfortable for people to ask questions, but I also realize there are people that learn by absorbing information, or they don't want to raise their hand. And so if they don't get it and they don't want to say anything, you have wasted their time. And so I don't want to waste people's time. I think you need easy, quick things that you can just go boom, 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 boom. Got it. Know how to do it, right? There's tons of different coaching models out there. They are all wonderful. But when you have to read a book on how to be a good coach, that it's great information. I will never knock any of that. But it's not something you're going to be like, oh, page 75. What am I supposed to do, right? It's like, no, boom, identify, prepare, conduct, follow up. That's how I look at it, right? Like, that's coaching. 4 steps, super easy. But so people have to remember it in the moment and to be able to draw upon it in the moment. So easy has to just be, I got this. I got it. And I forgot what company it was, but it used to have that little button that you'd push and it was like the easy button. And I always wanted one of those because, like, Staples. Oh, yeah, this is Staples. Thank you. Yeah, it's like, that's easy. And it should be easy, right? I had a bullshit button. So mine was really good because it'd be, that's bullshit. But that was really fun. But those easy buttons, it needs to be easy. And then engaging to me is, it's that connection with other people, right? And am I going to engage my learning? Do I learn by connecting with other people? But am I engaged with the information myself too? So if it's easy and I'm engaged with it, now I can be impactful. And that's the last one, right? I think a lot of times we kind of stumble around easy, or we just regurgitate stuff, whatever, and it's all simple. And people get so much, joy out of their PowerPoint presentations. Nothing wrong with PowerPoint or Keynote or anything like that, right? But it's not about that. Like, what I always think of in my head is, I'm the rock star, that's the background singer. And if the background singer is more impressive than the rock star, you got a problem. And so easy, simple, super short, sweet, anything like that. few words, images, those help. And then that engaging is like, do I actually, is this relevant to what I'm doing? Does it make sense? Like, do you know your business well enough to know what information needs to be sent out or pushed out or taught or whatever it might be? And so that's how it has to be engaging. It has to be something I can do something with. But those two, I think a lot of people get. I think it's the last one. The last one is the one that I am the most passionate about, which is impactful, which means will you do something with it? And will you be able to become the teacher now? Because you understand this information. And when, that saying that I'm not wise enough to think of this, but the student becomes the teacher, or the student becomes the master, whatever it is, that's kind of in the back of my head. It's like, that's where you know you made an impact, right? If you challenge people, you get a reaction from people, they do something with it, they can teach it back. That's when you know you've been impactful. And so that kind of journey, engaging impactful, is always in the back of my mind. At Baker, my last organization, we did a great job of that. And the team, I will not take credit for the work that they did, because the team really pushed hard and made this kind of our L&D story and really got it out there in the forefront. And I do think it helped the organization, and it is currently still helping the organization get through, transformation and some of the things that are going on. But I think, back in my days at other organizations where I use the same kind of model, and I know it's still there because it, again, simple, easy. Do I interact with this information, and will I do something with it? That's the trick at the end. But I have added, something new to that. And this was the team at Baker that we thought about this, and we added "and safe." And originally, it was when we were doing things in person, but it was right after the pandemic. So you had to make people feel it was a safe environment, but that wasn't really it. It was really psychological safety. So easy, engaging, impactful, and safe. Are you creating a safe environment where people want to speak up and they feel like they have a voice, and their voice will be heard, and that they're part of the learning, and that they can ask questions, they can challenge, each other in a safe way. And so I love that piece of it at the end of it also, which is, are you creating the right atmosphere for people to actually learn in? And I hope as learning professionals, people think that way all the time, but I don't know that it's true. I think a lot of us are just like, pushing out stuff and like, oh, it's what we're doing, same old stuff. It's like, you haven't thought it through. Just my opinion.
I have one final question for you. I think you'll like it. What advice would you give to a young Sean Conley just starting out as a CLO?
Okay, I'll give you the two pieces of advice. The first one is don't do it. No, just kidding. It's really fun. And I kind of say that jokingly, but maybe seriously at the same time. Because, or just make sure that's what you want. When you step into a learning leader position, you are stepping away from probably the love and the passion you had for learning, and now you have to use a different lens. So I think just really know that with that comes a whole different world. And that's a world of strategy, a world of finance, a world of, HR, politics, and leadership, and some things you don't want to do, right? It's aligning your team to the organization, and there's a ton of stuff there. But there's also great learning in that. And there's wonderful opportunities to now have a seat at the table and to connect the organization, the learning, like the strategy, which I really enjoyed. And I think it's really fun. And with my organization now, and I'm soon stepping into a new role, surprise, that's a bombshell I'm dropping right here live, that I'm not in that role, and I'm not in that role purposefully. I want to go back to do kind of what I love to do. And it's not that I didn't love that. That was just a different love, right? It was hard. It elevated me to a different platform. It got me different recognition, which is really cool. But now I'm just really happy that I get to go and impact in a way that I will find joy. And, I've worn those hats. I'm just wearing a different one now. And I'm excited about that because it's just kind of what I get a kick out of. So many people be like, well, why would you? And I actually had somebody say, why would you take a step back? And I'm like, I'm not taking a step back anywhere. Like, this is not a backward step. I'm going forward. I'm going forward in a new company, a new organization to do something that I love to do. And so when we only define success by having that, like you got the CLO position, I don't know about that. So we'll see. I think it'll be really interesting to see if I still get invited to conferences and things like that, because so many of those, again, routine behavior, right? It's you need a title to sit at that chair. I'm like, well, I sat at the chair, nothing's changed, right? I just have a different lens. So I'm totally just interested to see if whatever happens. But that other piece of advice, so that was kind of my smart aleck piece of advice, but I think it's actually really relevant. I think if you're a young me and you want to go into that role, kill it. Like, don't fit into that mold. Don't be like the CLO like everybody else. Chart your own territory and have fun. And don't be afraid to be different and to, make that mark that says learning is so critical. And I'm in that role to make critical decisions. But also make sure you have a seat at the table, because you don't want to lead a team where you are just the puppet master. You want to be part of the ringleader, of the circus, of which most companies are, just a crazy circus.
Amazing. And you take all those learnings of budgeting and politics and whatever.
Yeah.
And you're adding it to your bag of tricks anyway. So it's just going to make you that much better in the next role. That's the benefit.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And don't be afraid of what the next role is. And, I didn't know I was going to go back into the company because I thought, been there, done that. I'm tired. And then, I can still do Conley Global, but, and now it's time for me to put that aside again and kind of do something else. I just like the adventure. I think it's what makes the world fun. And to me, I'm kind of driven by that, but I know everybody's probably in a different space in their, or a different place in their careers. And so whatever you do, don't get lazy. Number one, too many people get lazy, and have fun, find joy in it, and then just go out there and kill it.
I mean, I can't think of a better way to end this. Thank you, Sean. This was awesome.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. It's so fun doing this.
We have so much fun with you, and I want to wish you the best of luck in your new gig, and I can't wait to find out exactly what you're going to be doing.
Soon to be revealed.